I think one of the interesting things about your story is that if I were to tell you that when you left your day job and started your business, you'd be sued 2 days later, would you still have taken the leap? That's a rhetorical question, because my real question is, that's your story.
Yeah.
What happened there? Like what was that like to go through in the worst possible scenario of not only do I have a new business but zero revenue, trying to figure this out, but I'm also now being sued on like day 2 of this business.
Yeah. We got a real quick crash course in just how the civil court system works, because stepping away from a current employer, we had a non-compete, right? And even though we didn't do anything to violate that non-compete, myself and my co-founder, the company that we left came after us immediately and asked the court to shut us down, asked for an injunction immediately. And I mean, that was scary. You know, I remember the uncertainty. A part of me is like 2 weeks in, like, well, we tried. we tried. Let me just go get a job. You know, maybe they'll still take me back. They'll close the lawsuit and take me back. But we got a quick crash course in how these things go. And it was a lengthy process. The court initially decided in our favor that we were not going to be shut down, but the claim was still there, so we had to respond to it. This was $1 billion corporation that was coming after us. And so if they spent $100,000, $200,000 just making life difficult for us so that we couldn't compete with them in the future, that was enough. That was okay for them. So I think it's kind of like we kind of went through a quick test early on, and you realize if you have the balls for this space or not. Because looking back on that now, just a few years ago, I don't even look back at them and say, man, that was so mean what they did to us. They're just playing the game.
Yeah.
They're playing the game. And the game of business is they were concerned that after our non-competes were up 12 months later, that we were going to take their customers. Well, what we had to do for our part of the game was to survive for 12 months, right? And when we did survive for 12 months, we have been successful in taking on some of their customers. Absolutely. Like, that's a part of the game. So they're just playing defense, and we had to go ahead and play defense on our side. It worked out for us, but it was a long process. And quite frankly, we ended up settling with them. We paid them money at the end of the day, even though they had no real claim to file upon.
And you won the lawsuit.
We won the lawsuit.
It was thrown out.
It was
and
thrown
yet you
out.
still ended up settling, which is
filed-
something that people don't know about our court system.
We filed a motion to dismiss about 6 months in after they had failed to be able to prove their claim. And the judge granted the motion to dismiss. He found for the defendants with damages. And we're like, great, we just won. We might even get our legal fees paid
Let's
for
go
as a part
sue
of this.
them now.
This is
Okay.
great. 2 weeks later, they refiled the case. And you learn this lesson that in civil court with business, it's understood that you're going to have a chance to refile at least one time. They filed the exact same case. They didn't care. It was about trying to bleed us dry. Once they didn't get us shut down in the first 2 weeks, the next game was bleed them dry. We're not sure if they have enough money to be able to fight this, and maybe we can push them out of business that way. And so, begrudgingly, our lawyers advised us that just pay them.
It's just cheaper to
Just pay them and make them go away. And I think that what maybe the lesson that was learned there was a really good lesson in just business risk. Because I'm like, no. We're not settling this. They're wrong. We're in the right here. We didn't do anything wrong. They're besmirching our good name amongst, like, this is a public lawsuit. And at the end of the day, I think our lawyer told us, look, you're going to settle with them. The number that they're asking for, it's a known number. But if you go to trial, the cost, the legal fees, everything that's going to go on, that's an unknown number, and there's no guarantee that you're going to win.
Yeah.
Because you could have a bad day in court, and all of a sudden you've lost now, and who knows what that judgment's going to look like.
Yeah.
So if you take the known number today, wash your hands of this thing and move on. And this is the way that he really convinced us. He said, look, you've already won. They didn't shut you down, and you've made it a year into your business. You can go do whatever you want now. You won this suit. Separate yourself from this little bit of money and call it a day. Another lesson learned.
Still hurts to pay them that settlement money, right? Just because you want to stick it to them. You know, yeah, I'm starting this business. I'll tell you this, as the investor in the business, when you get sued on day 2, there's 2 things that happen. Number 1, you think about, hey, how much is this going to cost? But number 2, more importantly, you think, all right, I bet on the right guys, because their company doesn't want them competing against them.
Right.
They're
Yeah.
worried about this.
Yeah.
Like, this is going to be a success. If you can make it through the lawsuit, and I think I try to encourage you guys all the way throughout, just fight, and just keep on moving forward the business, even though it does tie your hands behind your back of trying to raise more money when you're under current litigation as it goes forward. I find the whole thing like extremely interesting of how you had to fight through that and come out of this. We talked about this a little bit this morning, and I want to introduce this element. When you're in that lawsuit and you're going back and forth with an attorney, you're in a negative headspace about someone who's suing you, and you hop and talk to the attorney, you call me, you call your co-founder, you're having these conversations about how could they do this to us, and this isn't right, and how do we respond to this, how do we defend ourselves in this. What you're not doing is thinking about, hey, all day long I'm head down focused on growing this business and taking this solution out to the market. And even though you had to pay the settlement, when you remove yourself from that negativity, where you're not having the talk with the lawyer or having the conversations with me or others about that case, and you're just talking about growing the business, I find it very interesting that the moment that came to an end, you got into a positive space and the business sold, 2 months later? After that happened? We had suitors coming to get you. Talk to me about that process of being in the positive mindset, not having the negativity, and finding business success very quickly on the back end of that.
I remember how much of a thing it was for us. We were talking about this every single day. And it is really wild to think about how quickly that shifted. As soon as it was done and over with, we just grit our teeth, write the check, send it off. This thing is done. And now that distraction is completely gone. We didn't realize how much time it was actually taking up of our day, talking about this, mulling over it, losing some sleep at night over it, that kind of stuff. The lesson learned there is just being able to step away, like realize what's a big deal, what's going to matter this time next year, what's not going to matter this time next year, and like where are you actually going to put your focus, and focus on things that actually move the needle. But you can have all these ideas of things that are going to move the needle. If you have all these distractions that are stopping you, that can be a real issue that gets in the way. So it was a momentous decision for us looking back on it to be able to say, you know what? No, we're done with this thing. We're going to drive forward and we're going to focus on the future now. And no more upon the past.